Hello lovely people, Naomi from Craft Buddy here. I'll quickly go through what I'm going to be using, and then I can get on with some lovely crafting with you. So I'm going to be using these lovely new decorative nesting dies that are coming to you. I have the gorgeous circles, nesting decorative circles, the decorative ovals, and also the lovely leaf set, which I'll be using in my card project today. I'm also going to be using, which are already available, the Delightful Daisy stamp set and also the Delightful Daisy die set that are from Forever Flowerz, and I'm going to be using those in my card make as well. So, it wouldn't be a video from me if I wasn't using some inks. So I'm going to be using some Oxide inks today to first of all create myself a background for my card, and I'm going to use some blending tools to blend my inks just quickly to create some colour in the background of my card. So I'm going to start off with my darkest colour, which this is Wilted Violet, and I'm just going to lay some ink down using the blending tool in circular motions to create a smooth blend. And this is some of the Craft Buddy stamping cards I'm using, which takes ink really well. You'll see me using it all the time. So I tend to work in three, so I'm going to work a little of that ink into three areas. I've then got some shaded lilac ink, which is quite a bluey lilac, which will work nicely with the blue ink I'm going to use. I'm going to lay some over. Now with Oxide inks you can layer them up, so you can take some over where you've already inked and it will give you a sort of tone on tone effect. So I'm just picking up that ink on my blending tool and then using those circular motions just to take that ink in there. A bit more down here I think. And then I'm going to use some Broken China, which is a lovely blue, and I'm going to blend some of that in too. And what I tend to do, so I'm going to lay down this ink, which is quite a contrasting colour compared to the other two, and then I'm going to blend over with the lighter shade to blend it in nicely, and it will just take the edge off. You can see how that takes the colour into the other two, blends them in really nicely. So using this rounded tool helps you not have any straight edges in your blending. Okay, so this is quite vibrant at the moment, but I'm going to take it back with some water because these inks are water reactive, so I'm going to put those out of the way and get myself a water spray. And I'm going to put some ink into my hand so I can splat it on with my fingers and create water splats from larger places, and if you leave for a few seconds it will start to react. Okay, and then I'm going to lightly mist over just to take the ink down a little bit more. I'm going to use my mucky cloth that I always keep by me, just a microfiber cloth, and you can use kitchen towel and just take that water off. Okay, and you'll see it's given me a lovely textured background. So now I could leave that to dry, or I can use a heat tool on that, but I've taken as much of the water off as I need to be able to continue with what I'm doing. It will dry as I'm finishing off the piece. So I'm going to let that dry naturally. It tends to dry much flatter if you let the water evaporate on its own. So I've got, it looks quite spacey actually. Like a lovely space card, that one, with those three colours together. Now I'm going to use some of the daisy stamps. I'm going to take out, now mine are very mucky, very well used. So I'm going to use some of the daisy heads. I'm going to put one of the smaller daisy heads on. I'm going to use one of the larger daisy heads to begin with. Okay. And I'm going to use some of these inks again to overstamp. So I'm going to use some of that blue. We've got a lot of purple there. So I'm using the same inks and I'm just going to overstamp with some of the blue, with some of these lovely large daisies. And this daisy stamp I'm using actually fits the die cuts for the die. And you'll see you'll see there that there is some lovely blue ink. Okay, so just going to add in a few of these, and I'm not worried too much about the central area because that's going to have a topper on it, so I don't need to put too much detail in there. I'm just creating a background piece. So I've used that blue with that lovely large daisy stamp, making sure that I take some of my images off the edge, and I'm also going to come in with some of the darker, the wilted violet, the darker shade, with the daisy, little daisy from the set as well. And I'm going to intersperse those about. I'm not worried about whether or not the stamp is stamping perfectly, because it's just supposed to be a faded background. And if I feel there's too much ink, I can always put some more water on and take that back. Okay, so I'm going to remove that smaller daisy and use one of the flourishes that is also in this daisy set. And just add in a little more detail in places and twisting the stamp each time so that I am getting a different look. I don't want them all to look too uniform and too placed. So again, I'm taking some of those off the edge. So I've created for myself very, very quickly a lovely piece of background card. Okay, and what I'm going to show you, so I've used some of the lovely Craft Buddy glitter card in this make. I'm using one of the 7x7 card blanks. So what I've done is I've frugaled my first mat of lovely purple glitter cardstock. This is non-shed glitter. You can die cut this beautifully, and it will give you a really beautiful finish. And because I'm having quite a high element on this card, I'm not going to add in any foam tape to the base layer. I'm going to lay my layer down, and you can see I've cut out the middle of my card so that I can use that on another project. So I'm going to stick this onto my card. Okay, and I've cut this so that it's really, I've cut it to 6 3/4, so it's just leaving me a very thin white border. And then I'm going to lay down this piece of card that I've made, this inky card that I've made. So this, once you've got some stamping cards and some inks, you're never out of a background. You can always use your stamps and your inks and stencils and all those things to create your own backgrounds. They are tools rather than buying lots of paper pads. So I'm going to lay that down, and this is the Craft Buddy Premium glue that I'm using, and this will stick really, really well to that glitter card. So I've got that beautiful base, and you can see already that that is going to make it, that would make a lovely card just on its own. But I have also been using the Craft Buddy nesting dies. This is one of the ovals. This is the largest oval, and you can see that it gives you this lovely filigree detail, and it also gives you a lovely stitched edge. And I've cut the white mat that also comes in the set, the edge that cuts, so you can make this a frame if you wanted to, so you can cut that out of the centre. But I've created a white mat, and I'm going to put this onto my card about here. And what I like to do is plan. So I've also cut myself one of the circle dies. This is the smallest die for a little sentiment tab, which is going to go, I think, now this is where I need to plan, because I think that this is going to go down here. I always like to plan my cards. I've also cut some of the lovely leaves, and I've cut some of the lovely leaves in some purple satin, some silver satin, and some purple glitter card that we've been using already. And those will be creating our topper today. So what I tend to do, like I said, is to plan out just about where I want these leaves and berries and sprigs to go. And then I'm going to think about, so I don't want those, that's the same foliage as that side, so I want to have different types. So I can start to, and I can break these down a little bit more if I want to when I'm finished. I want a little bit of silver just to add a bit of highlight. Okay, so I can start to fill out that card blank. I'm probably going to use some ribbon across the bottom in a shade similar to that shaded lilac. I'm not sure about that yet. I might leave that. I might create a strip with something. And I'm also going to use some flowers from the dies that I showed you, which was the daisy dies. The daisy die, if I show you, this is the Forever Flowerz delightful daisy die, and it comes on one plate that will fit through an A5 machine or larger, and it will cut out all 4 petals for you to make your daisy. And I have cut these using some lovely iridescent cardstock, and I'm going to use my flower shaping tools to give the petals, I'm going to put this to one side for a moment, to give the petals a bit of a shape before I make up my daisy, because the paper at the moment is very flat. So I've got my Craft Buddy toolkit here that will enable me to shape my flowers well. I'm going to put that glue away because otherwise it will dry up and it will be no good to anybody. So I've got myself some petals, and I've cut out, because this is a heavyweight paper rather than a cardstock that I'm using, I was able to cut out 2 layers at a time, so I've got lots and lots of petals here. So I want 1 large daisy, for which I need 3 of the large petals and 3 of the smaller petals. And I'm also going to make 2 smaller daisies so that I can create like a little flag. So I've got those 3 for my larger one. So I need 4 more smaller petals to be able to make my 2 smaller daisies, and then I've got some more left for later. And you'll see that these dies are unique because they cut out the exact right shaped 5 hole in the centre of the daisy petal for you to be able to use your Forever Flowerz accessories. So I'm going to turn my petals onto the back, and I'm going to start from under the tip and drag my ball tool into the centre so that the petals curl upwards, because what you're doing is you're breaking the fibres of the paper to give it shape. You can do this with your fingers, but you'll get some shape. You won't get it quite as much movement in your petals with your fingers, but you can use your fingers to shape them as well. And then I'm going into the centre, going round and round, and that will bring that petal up and give it some shape. Because when you buy our Forever Flowerz fabric petals, they are already shaped for you when they've been die cut. They're sort of heat treated to stay in the shape that you want them to be. With the paper ones, you need to shape them yourself. So, it's 2, and this really isn't a long job. I'm just quickly shaping all of these petals just to give it more shape and interest on my card. And this is why that first mat I didn't raise up, because I don't want the card to end up being so high that I need to pack it as a parcel if I'm going to post it out. If you're giving a card by hand, then it's much easier to be able to build your layers at higher. But if you want to post, I always think about the layers I'm using and whether or not it will fit in an envelope and be classed as a letter rather than a parcel. I have to think about all of these things, don't we? So I'll get in there. We've got all of these little petals. And the daisies are a very simple flower to make, and I'll show you in a moment how these daisies are made, because they fit together with the accessories without you even needing to use the Forever Flowerz tool. So they are really, really simple to put together, these daisies, and they give you a really gorgeous effect. And I just love the middles because they've got that lovely natural pollen sort of look to them. Very clever. Look like a real flower. So just keep shaping those petals. What you'll notice is I'm not holding on to my flower while I'm shaping it. If you hold on to the flower, the petals just won't shape. So you just need to go with it, and it'll roll around the mat, but you just follow where it's leading. So I'm going to use the larger end of my flower shaping tool now for these larger petals. And again, drag those from the tip into the middle, and you can see how much shape I'm getting. from this shaping tool. So just keep going around and just treat it in exactly the same way. Turn it over and then round and round in the middle. If I can use the smaller end to just bring that up a little bit. I might end up using all three. I might only end up two. We'll see how they fit on to the stems, because it all depends when you're making the die cut flowers on the thickness of the medium you're using as to how full a flower you can get. So turn that over, give that a little squish in the middle, and we can see how lovely. You can see the difference between using the flower shaping tool and not. This gives you a much more natural petal look. So it just depends what sort of look you're going for with your flowers. Turn that into the larger ball end. There we go. Underneath the tip, dragging into the middle. And you just press into the foam mat and that will shape your petals. Okay, so again, round and round into the middle. And there I have all my petals. I'll put those out the way. I'll bring in so for the daisies, all you need is the daisy centres and you need the end caps. Okay, so I'm going to build one of the large daisies, so I'm going to put on one of the small petals and then intersperse one of the larger petals behind it. Then I'm going to put another one of the small petals, and although you can't see most of this petal, what it does is it gives your flower some volume. Then I'm going to intersperse between the gaps of the first large petal, the next, and you can see already that that is giving you a really lovely daisy. And then I can, because this is a thinner paper, I can now put in my extra layer. So I've got that other small petal, and then my final large petal, just fit it so it's interspersed between some of the other petals, and you'll get a really beautiful daisy. And then on with your end cap. Okay, so then if you want to, you can just fluff those petals up a little bit more. Now that because they're paper, so they don't move as freely as the fabric, and they'll give you a really beautiful daisy. Okay, and then I've got two smaller ones, so I'm just going to use two small petals for each of these. So I put on my first petal and then intersperse the second petal between, and you can just give it a little twist if it's not quite gone where you want it to go, and then an end cap, and that will give me another little daisy. There's my little, so you've got those two different sizes from that one die set. And then the final one, so I've got my three flowers for my topper. Now, so just intersperse them. So can you see that those have gone one behind the other? All I do is just hold a couple of the petals gently and then twist, and it should move round. There we go. Oh, it wants to sit. It wants to spoon the other one. There we go. And then put the back on, and you've got those lovely shaped daisies. All three of those daisies ready for your card topper. What I'm going to do is take some of the shaded lilac, the lighter of the ink, and just run it over the tips of my daisies so that it's got a bit of coordination with my card. So I'm just giving it a tint of colour. I'm not going full blown purple, I'm just giving it, I'll get a little bit more ink on my blending tool, a little hint on the tips. You know, you get daisies have little tips of colour. So I'm not going full purple or full lilac, I'm just going with a little tip, just to take some of that brightness down a bit from the iridescent paper, sorry. So there we go, just put that little bit of ink on there. It's very, very subtle, you can go darker if you want to. So I'm going to bring my card back in. So I've got this lovely topper. I could have cut out that circle from the centre of there because I'm not going to see the back. So I can do that. What I am going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of colour to this topper, particularly around the edges, with my inks, because I've got them there, so I might as well use them. So I'm going to just brush on and take off the whiteness of the edge. Okay, I can just take off some of that whiteness. If I want to, I can take that in a bit further just by blending over the edge, and it will give you, can you see it's giving a faded effect? There we go, so giving a faded effect around the edge. I can bring in some of that blue also, just so it marries in with the back a little bit, and I'll also do a little tiny bit around the centre and topper, just so it's all coordinating. So, some of that blue, just a bit, just a hint, just to add in areas so that it's mirroring that background. There we go. So that's going to then, you can see that tones down the white. It still makes it stand out. You still got enough whiteness to stand out from the background, but it just tones it down a little bit. So I'm going to stick this, get my glue. Now keep my premium glue in a Ziploc bag with a wet baby wipe because I use the fine nib and I don't want it to dry out. So just need to add some glue on there, and then I'm going to place this onto my topper, and I just need to place it within that stitched detail. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that that's put down, and again, now I'm going to mount this one on some foam tape, because what I'm going to do is create some holes to hold my daisies in place. Using, in the flower shaping kit, you get a large pokey tool, and what I've found is that I can put some of the stem through and it makes the flower even more stable. So what I want is one central hole in the centre of my topper that I've created. And I'm going through 2 layers, so I'm putting the mat underneath, and you'll see that that's created a really nice shaped hole for that stem to be able to fit through. So if I put that flower in first, so I can poke that through, you can see that's lying quite flat now, and what I will do is end up snipping off a little bit of the back, but not until my flower's in there. So I know that one fits, and I can see that I want 2 more flowers, and I'm going to put them slightly at angles. So I'm going to put one up here, the smaller daisies, and one down here. I don't want them all in a straight line. So I've now got those 3 holes that I know those stems will fit through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some glue gel just to give me a bit of extra security to hold these in place. So I'm going to put some on the back of this flower and poke that through my mat. Then I'm going to put some more on the back of this smaller daisy and poke that one through my mat where I've positioned that hole. And what I can do is lift those, the larger daisy petals up and over the smaller one, so it's kind of sitting behind. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue gel also on the back of this third daisy. And what I find is it just gives you a little bit of added security, and you're using the stems to kind of steady the flowers, which is helpful. Okay, you can just snip off most of the stem and apply with 3D glue, but I quite like doing that. But make sure you always leave a couple of millimetres. So you can see now that that is going to go onto here, but the stems are making it too proud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my scissors and snip off, not all of it, but most of the stem, leaving a bit that's still through the card. I'm going to then use some foam tape, and I'm going to add a little bit of glue just because it's got some weight to it. And I'm going to put my foam tape to mount this onto my card, and this foam tape will take me just about, now if I'm looking, I can see that stem is slightly taller. So what I'm going to do to make sure that I've got this at the right height is put a double layer of foam tape so that those stems I know are not going to push against the card and warp the card. So all I do is add another layer on top, take that slightly higher, and this is why I didn't put any foam tape on my first mat, because I know that this is going to be higher. I'm going to put a couple of bits on the end, and there, and then just hold this all in place. Okay, and I can take this off and put another piece on top, and I know that I'm going to have a really secure topper for my card. And like I said, poking those holes in the card makes a big difference to your flowers staying stable when they are 3D like these ones. Get rid of that little bit too long. There we go. Okay. So what I'm also going to do, so now that's taken the foam tape higher than the leftover bit of stems that I've poked through my card. I'm going to add, like I said, this. Ooh, take that one off. I'm going to add a little bit of extra glue, just because this topper has got some flowers attached to it, so it's a little bit more weighty. I'm also going to add some more glue gel just to the back of those stems as a double bit of security, a double whammy bit of security to keep those in place. So I know that they're really not going to go anywhere. Right, so now I can place this down. So what I'm going to do is place this slightly up, not quite centrally, slightly up. Press down where that foam tape is. You can see those are sitting nice and proud now. And I'm going to think about where I want that foliage to be. I'm going to use my fine nib for this foliage, and I don't have to use, so like for example this piece I think it's too long, so I can just break a little bit off. I can use all the little bits and pieces and create the foliage for my daisies. You can of course use green if you wanted to, but I wanted to have a tone on tone card. So the only extra colour really is the yellow from the pollen on the daisy centres, which I like because it kind of makes it kind of pops. So let's see, yeah, I think that one's too long as well, so I'm going to take that bit off. I might be able to use that in a minute. And just add in the foliage to my card. I've got all of this foliage here that I've cut. So I can, and it's nice because they are so fine, you can just break them in pieces and make them fit your, whatever it is you're making. So I've got these lovely large daisies, so I've got a bit of satin over there, so I'll have another piece coming up here. Just sticking these in wherever I think I can see where they need to go. Got some lovely glitter card, and you can see how beautifully it has die cut. Okay, a few more. So let's have some more of these leaves coming out down here. It's just to add texture and interest to your card. So let's have, yeah, this one coming down here. Then we'll have another, let's have a bit of silver. Let's have some of those silver berries. So let's, again, break that off. We don't need it to be as long as that for this card. Add some glue in with that fine nib. It's great because you can get it exactly where you need it to be. And add those berries in, just at the side over here. So you're starting to get that build up of foliage. And then I've got this other silver I can add in over here. So you don't need to cut as many pieces as you like. So I've got all these pieces I'm taking off. I've got extra pieces to add in. I'm going to layer that up so it's starting to have a bit more texture. I'm going to have another bit of purple glitter just coming up here in the other direction. So I can lift that power up because I know it's very secure in place now. It's not going to move anywhere. I've got another bit of silver foliage left, so I can put that down here, slightly overlapping, giving you that kind of layered effect. We'll have let's see. So have a look, have an inspect. I need a bit more silver. I'll use those silver berries. Just going to snip off where I've ripped that. Give me a finished edge. And then I'm going to put this one just coming out here, adding that little bit of silver. So that's giving me, and I've got some other little bits there to use on the project. Put my glue back in my glue for a moment back in my bag, and I'm going to find myself a sentiment. Now I've got a very small sentiment, little sentiment topper here. So I need to decide where I want it to go. Do I want it at the top? Do I want it at the bottom? Do I want it in the centre? I think I'm going to put it in this corner. I think I'm also going to add in a ribbon. Like I said, I've got that lilac ribbon, so I'm going to tie myself a bow. So what I tend to do is some bunny ears, because I want something in both of the corners. Okay, so I've tied myself a bow, and all I do is just fiddle around with it so I've got the shape and size I want. I tend to, if I'm putting on a card at an angle like I'm going to with this one, if you grab both tails and both of the bow loops and pull them tight, you'll get them to lie behind each other. Okay, so I'm going to then hope my scissors are sharp enough and snip to make a tail. And I'm just using some organza ribbon from my stash to do this. So I'll put that one going. Let me do this one as well. Okay. So I'm going to have a bow at the top of my card up here to even out the two corners of my card. And I've got my sentiment up here, and I've got a little sentiment that says happy birthday. That should, I do believe, yes, it fits into that circle. And this sentiment is from the sheet chrysanthemums set of stamps, and that fits perfectly in there. So put that black ink pad away, because I will probably lean in it, because that's what I'm like. And again, with that fine nib on my glue, go around and place that into the centre, again using the stitching as the guide as to where your central placement is, with that nested decorative circle die. Okay, and I know that I want this to sit slightly underneath, so because I know I've got 2 layers of foam on there, all I'm going to do is just add in 1 layer of foam to my circle, and that will mean that I can slightly overlap the two. I can put this slightly underneath the lip of the oval. And because this is glitter card, like I said, it's very, really good non-stick, non-shed glitter, but glitter card always needs a little bit of extra glue to help you with sticking. So I can put that slightly under the lip, so it's slightly off, and then centralise that on there. I'm going to add this bow. Do I want to bring those down a little bit? Maybe like that. So yeah, I'm going to add this bow in the corner with some of my glue gel, and then I'm going to add some gems just to highlight certain areas of the card. So it's a very large blob I've got there. I don't want all of that for that tiny. So I'm going to put that on the back of where the bow has been tied, and then just place that in the corner of my card so that it's skirting around the edge of that oval. And then I'm going to add in some gems. And these are self-adhesive gems, but I'm going to add in a little bit of glue just to make sure they don't pop off. I'm going to add a few onto the top of there, 3. And then I'm going to put some in the corners of my card. And I've got purple ones, and I've got the blue ones. I might use the blue actually to pick out some of this blue ink that I've used. So I've got, yeah, almost the exact right shade for that broken china ink that I used. So let's get those there. Ooh, sticky fingers, I've got a bit of glue gel on my fingers. So there we go. So I'm going to put one in there, and I'm going to put 3 just dotted around that top to add a little bit of sparkle and bling. And then we have a beautiful finished card. Let's have those teeny tiny ones. I do like those little teeny tiny ones. Get a little bit of sparkle without being too big. Right. So there's my finished project for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching. You can see you've got some lovely dimension from those flowers. You've got some sparkle from the gems and the satin card, and that lovely inky background. So I do hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you all again soon.